So what I've got here is a wooden plaque that I glued together out of 1x4s. And then I put some elk antlers. I'll probably misspeak many times. I always call them horns, but they're not horns. They're antlers. Anyway, I thought somebody might like to know how I made that. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of it and post this video on YouTube. Hopefully it'll help someone. I'm making plaques now to put the deer horns and elk horns on. And basically that's what this video is about. I'm not going to try to show you in this video how to glue these up because there's already several good videos on YouTube on how to glue boards together, either edge to edge or edge to face or however you want to glue them together. In my case, I did them edge to edge, and I used 1x4s. And when you buy a 1x4, it's not really 1x4. It's 3/4 of an inch by 3.5 inches. So I needed a pattern to cut this elk plaque out with. And I used a piece of paper. This was butcher paper that we had bought back whenever we hunted a lot. And what I did was I cut a square out, and then I just put a line with a straight edge right down through the center of it. And then I used triangles to come 90 degrees off of that line, off of the center line. I'm going to call the center line the one coming down. And then I would come off of the center line 90 degrees. And I made lines about every 3.5 inches because that's what the wood is going to end up being. And I may have made even more. I may have cut those 3.5 inches in half or into 1 inch increments or 1.5 inch increments, and tried to come the same distance off a center line so that it would pretty much be uniform, the same on both sides of center line. And if I move those out of the way, you can see here that my first dimension from the point up at the top, instead of being 3.5, now it's 3.25 after I cut this out. So, and I ended up with a 7 3/8 inch line from center line over to the edge of the paper. But then I said that the total of that would be 14 3/4 out to out. But I said to cut that piece of 1x4 15.5 inches, which would give me some to cut off on both sides. And that was one of the main reasons for making this pattern. One was to sketch out how, until I got the sketch looking pretty good and the uniform distance off a center line on both sides. And then I could also determine from there what size of wood I should cut. And then I marked the center line on that piece of wood. And then I just lined all the pieces of wood up with each other and decided where I wanted to put my dowels when I glued it together. But you can see the next piece down is 3.5 inches. I said to cut it 15.5 inches, the same as the one up on the top. And then the next one down is also 3.5 inches. And I said to cut it 13.5 inches because it's 6 3/8 inch each side of center line. And then the one coming on down to the point is going to end up being 2 3/8. I think there again I used 3.5 inches, but I ended up cutting some of it off. And it's 4 inches each side of center line. And I said to cut that piece 9 inches long. So that was my pattern. And I'm going to show you a little bit more down on my horse barn of how I proceeded to make this plaque here. So I freehand drew this plaque onto some butcher paper. And then I cut it out with scissors and taped it onto this 1x4 piece of glued together wood. And I've tried to trace it on there. So I think I'm ready to basically take this tape off, maybe finish my little traces, and then I'm going to start cutting it out, excuse me, with my Bosch jigsaw. And the blades I'm going to use are these scrolling blades. Says right there, fine scroll cuts in wood. They're 3-inch, 20 TPI, tooth per inch. And those are the blades I'm planning to use. I already have one in here. So I think this was the speed I used last time. Oh, anyway, I'm going to finish my tracing, now I'm going to start cutting. Okay, so I've removed my pattern, and there it is penciled in on my glued up 1x4s. And all I got to do now is cut it out, do some sanding on the edges. I'm planning to route this edge here with a round over, maybe with a small bead, and we'll see how it comes out in the end product. So I started over here on this corner. I'm going to continue just a little bit, and then I'll pause the movie. Okay, so I don't think you need to see all of that. It's going to take a while. I'm going to go ahead and pause it. Okay, so there's one side cut out. I'll unclamp it and do the other side. Okay, so I finished cutting it out. And I think it came out pretty good. Ended up getting a few splinters here and there, but like I say, I'm going to round over the edges, so I don't think that matters. Going to also sand down the edges before I route it so that they'll be nice and smooth. And then I'll just have to touch them up a little bit after I route it. I'm going to try to sand this little edge over here with my drill press. back side. So I didn't take any footage of me routing this, and it's already done. But basically, I can tell you that I used a round over bit, and I used this one right here, 1/4 inch radius, and that's it inside the router there. You can see I've taken it out of this holder. And I bought this router not too long ago. It's a Cobalt, and this is the table that came with it. I bought it at Lowe's, and it just happened to be on sale. Normally $169, on sale for $129. And I've been pretty happy with it. I've done a few things on the table, and I've done a few things freehand. I had tried to do one of the plaques on the table, but because I'm not a professional glue, creating a glued up board, my board is not perfectly flat. So what happens when you put it on the table and you try to route it on the table, you don't end up with a uniform edge radius. So I found doing it, taking the router out of the table and doing it freehand, I got better results. Also, the fact that I'd cut this with a jigsaw, the edges were a little wavy, a little rough, couldn't get them a perfect radius on there. So that also interfered somewhat with the routing of the edges. But it came out, I'm happy with it. It's, like I say, it's just a plaque for putting some elk horns on. And basically that's my footage and my story about the router. So I did stain this yesterday, and I left it out here overnight, and it's dry now. And there's the pieces that I cut off. So you can see that the stain that I use is not a real dark stain. It's a stain that my wife likes. She bought some furniture made with pine, and it was stained with this same color. So now everything in the house gets this same stain. And you can see the difference between the non-stained wood and the stained wood. It brings out the color and of pine pretty nicely. The grain and everything, the knots. So the next trick is to pick out a set of elk horns. Sometimes when we cut those elk horns off in the forest, up in the wilderness, so it'd be easier to put them on a horse. They're not cut on a very good angle for mounting on a wooden plaque like this. So I'll have to do some testing with that, and if they're not right, I'll probably have to use my angle grinder to grind down the skull so that it comes out the way it needs to come out to mount on this wooden plaque. I may take some footage of that. We'll see how it comes out. So there's the first one I made, and I showed in the beginning of the video. And here's the one that I just made. And I'm happy with it. It came out pretty good.